third chapter today. Today we will chant the entire Gita Dhyanam also, the other shlokas, since we are starting a new chapter. Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini. Namostu te vyasa vishala buddhe Pullara vindayata patra netra Yena tvaya bharata taila purnaha Prajvalito jnanamayah pradipaha Prapanna parijataya Totra vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya krishnaya Geetamrutaduhe namaha. Sarvopanishado gavaha Dogda gopalanandanaha Partho vatsasudhir bhokta Dugdham Geetamrutam mahat Vasudev Vasutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishmadrona Tata Jayatra Tajala Gandharani Lotpala Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Velakula Ashwathama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Khalu Pandavairananadi Kaivatrakah Keshavaha Parashatyavacha Sarojam Amalam Geetartha Gandhotkatham Nanakyanaka Kesaram Harikataha Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajjana Shatpadaira Haraha Pepiyamanam Muda Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvamshina Shreyase Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedhai Sangapada Panishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyana Vastita Tatkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam Navidhusura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So since we are starting the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, I thought it is appropriate to chant again the whole Gita Dhyanam today. So the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita is probably the most popular chapter, I would say. And I'm sure you would all agree to it, right? Because it really deals with all of us who are so addicted, and I say the word addicted, to action. We feel that if I don't do something, and if I'm just sitting around, that something is wrong with me, right? But Bhagavad Gita reminds us in many ways that we are actually human beings. And of course, even beyond that, which we will, of course, discuss in many chapters. But we are mostly human doings. We are always doing something. So this chapter directly speaks to us about how we can really convert all those actions, what we do on a day-to-day basis, into right and necessary actions. There are also very beautiful shlokas in this chapter which talks about how we can perform our actions without our ego coming underway, without our ego coming forward and saying that I did it, and enjoying things for that. It also speaks to a number of qualities which really drives our actions. And these qualities or gunas are essentially our personality types. In the corporate world, in the regular world, we go through a number of personality types, the Myers-Briggs, and I guess there are so many others which have come up in recent times. But Bhagavad Gita tells us if you know these three gunas, then you are good to go. You can really know who you are. So that, and then the third chapter also talks about really what is ideal teamwork, the yajna spirit. We will see that very soon. And also leadership qualities. Who is really the best leader? How can you define who is a good leader? So there is another beautiful shloka for that. So a lot to learn from this chapter to put that into action. So let's get started. So this chapter has 43 verses. I guess a little more than half of what we did with the second chapter. But unlike second chapter, this we will go a little faster because some of the concepts we already discussed in chapter 2. So third chapter will be more or less a kind of an application of what we studied already in the second chapter. So this slide, what I have here, is to give you a bird's eye view or maybe an overview of the third chapter. So it is about Karma Yoga or the yoga of action. And we will define, of course, again, what exactly Karma Yoga is a little bit. But clearly, the chapter is because we as human beings are always acting in this world. Acting means not the drama acting. That's not what I mean here. But want to say that this action in anything and everything we do is fundamental. It is really the fundamental to our life itself, right? Our life is full of processes. We are constantly doing something or the other. But the critical thing, what this chapter will talk about, is how the quality of the action is actually the thing we need to work on. It's not the quantity, not the number of actions we do, but the quality. And this quality of action is actually determined by the attitude. What kind of an attitude do we have in the action, whether it is at work, as an employee, whether as a parent, as a child? All this is determined by the attitude I bring into the action and the motivation which is needed. So we see Lord Krishna, which appeals to Lord Arjuna here, to perform actually the niyata karma, which is the kartavya karma, or the karma which is in tune with who I am, what is my personality. So he talks a lot about it. We will see again the breaking up of karma into what are the different type of karmas we do, and how is kartavya karma the important one. So we will talk, we'll discuss a lot about the action aspect in this here. Next, we have Lord Krishna reminding Arjuna about teamwork. Teamwork, here the shlokas, and again I'm using the word teamwork because in today's world, if I were to say yajna, and if you see all the priests here doing yajna here, one would wonder, what is that yajna? And you will see this in Balaji temple, we do a lot of yajnas. And this is the tatparyam behind what that yajna is all about. So the yajna is how it is basically the idea of doing a teamwork, coming together in such a way that the actions are dedicated to a higher ideal. So those days it used to be the fire worship, and of course we will go into detail about the yajna later on. But the whole idea here is to show that this yajna spirit really gives an idea of what is a give and take policy. This is to say that the Prajapati, the creator, he made the human being and then he gave him the unique capacity of sacrifice. Sacrifice indicating that as a human being, we have everything what we need, and our thing is not about taking from the environment, but it is giving back. So it is only by this give and take between us and the environment, which includes all the planets, the sun, the earth, all our beings together. How do we do this give and take policy? So that is the idea behind which is talked about here. So we will go into those aspects. The next we have is what we want to say is I'm shifting my camera here so that I can see the slide also, is the aspect of inner calling or the swadharma. So how do we, what is my swadharma? What is my really inner calling? And this question is something that comes to all of us from the time we are in school to the time we go to work, when we change jobs, to the point till we retire. We always want to understand really what is my true purpose in life. This question comes up. So this, we will address it again in the form with all the three gunas. We'll discuss in that aspect here. So that's quite a lot of discussion goes in there. And then we have the sattva, rajas, tamas, the three gunas, the three personalities, or the three gunas which makes up our personalities, sattva, rajas, and tamas. So this will give us a lot of idea on how we will be using this energy, how we work towards doing this, and how this helps us also in being efficient in our actions. So this is, and finally, we will also be talking about desire. What is desires and what kind of desires should we have? What is it that we want to avoid? And this is again tied very nicely with the gunas in this chapter, sattva, rajas, tamas. So you see, sattva, rajas, tamas helps us in determining our swadharma. It also helps us in determining all this, the desire. So desire, we will see as to how it is defined. Is it really a friend, or is it our enemy, or how do we deal with this desire? So ultimately, the whole chapter finishes with Lord Krishna giving us the advice on how to channelize our energy, and how to channelize energy in fulfilling those desires which will allow us to climb the higher rung, and allowing us to detach ourselves from the type of desires which tends to consume us, which tends to really pull us down. So this is the message that you will see in the third chapter. So the Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, Karma Yoga, starts with really a question from Arjuna. And the reason why the question from Arjuna is because we saw in the first chapter, which is Arjuna Vishada Yoga. That was the first chapter. In there, we saw what was the problem Arjuna was facing. And this was he was facing his biggest challenge. And we are also Arjunas. We also face challenges in small to big. And when we face these challenges, we face basically a confusion on what step to take. And depending upon how big this problem is, it can lead to all kinds of issues. We have seen Vita, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha, all the way starting from an attachment leading to, anger, a delusion, a lot of these things. And in and through all this, we saw in the second chapter how Lord Krishna reminded Arjuna about that everything starts by the fact that Arjuna had confused himself about his true identity. We saw that from the level of Atma, from the level of the subtle body, from the level of the individual, and from the level of Dharma, all this we saw where Lord Krishna explained to Arjuna about that whole vision of Sankhya Yoga, the vision of Karma Yoga, which he called it as Buddhi Yoga. So we saw all this which was presented, and then finally, in the last 18 shlokas of that second chapter, we saw how Lord Krishna gave the example of a perfect person. So with all this being said, you would think the story is over, that Krishna basically has given the philosophy, and it's up to Arjuna now to figure out how to use a philosophy in his own life and how to basically fight the battle, because that's what Krishna said. Krishna had said at the end of the day, karmani vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, fight with no, nothing to hold on to any result at all, right? But we see Arjuna asking a question. And thank goodness Arjuna asked the question, because we heard the philosophy from Lord Krishna, but we still have so many doubts. And these doubts have to be resolved. How can we otherwise move ahead, right? So we have Arjuna asking the question on behalf of all of us in this chapter number 3. And understandably, I think you would also probably would have asked the same question which Arjuna asked, because on one hand, here we are, listening to the highest philosophy because we really want to know what it is. But at the same time, when Lord Krishna was telling Arjuna about how, with the shlokas, Prajahati Yada Kaman, that shloka, and then even this beautiful shloka about how the Sthita Prajna is the person who's like an ocean, desires come into him, but he doesn't get ruffled. He doesn't start, acting for his desires, all this. So Arjuna would have definitely been confused, hey, Krishna, are you asking me to then fight? Or are you asking me to, go to the Himalayas? You're giving me the highest knowledge. What am I to do? Just like here, we are listening to this knowledge. Does that mean that I now give up my job? I just spend all my 18 hours meditating. Is that what I'm supposed to do? So, these questions, they come to us all the time. So that's where this third chapter is so very important, because this chapter is all about action. And it is really for all of us, because we are not there yet to totally give up everything. Because even if we were to give up and go somewhere, trust me, our mind will still go towards the unfinished business that we get into, right? So this is the reason why you have Arjuna asking this question. And let us really see what the question is and what was really his confusion. Atha tritiyoऽധ്यायः Arjuna uvacha. Arjuna uvacha. Jayasi chet karmanaste. Jayasi chet karmanaste. Mata buddhir janardhana. Mata buddhir janardhana. Tat kim karmani ghore mam. Tat kim karmani ghore mam. Niyojayasi keshava. Niyojayasi keshava. So here he's calling Lord Krishna by two different names here. In the first line, Hey Janardhana. Hey Janardhana. And in the second line, he has this name, Hey Keshava. I think we've already covered these two names here, so I will not really go into the meaning about this. But Vishnu Sahasranamam is a great text if you want to go deep into each one of the names of these two beautiful names here. So he says, Arjuna is questioning Lord Krishna. The gist of it here is, if really knowledge is superior to action, because if you remember towards the end, when he explained about that Esha Brahmi Sthiti, that how that state of knowledge and how that is the highest state. So if that is the case, if that state is so higher than action, if you think that knowledge is so, then Arjuna is asking, why are you asking me to get into this action? Why should I really fight all these people? After all, they're my people and I have to kill them. Is that really true? So that's the gist of it. But let us try to understand also a little more in terms of the Sanskrit words also. So Jayasi meaning superior. Superior chet. Iti chet, that's a standard kind of a question you'll see in many Upanishad bhashyas. Iti chet, that is if. So Jayasi, if you think that this karmanaha, that is this particular action that Krishna is asking him to do, if you think that is superior, mataha, mata means in your opinion, mata means opinion, so in your opinion, okay, so and here buddhi is referring to knowledge here. So hey Lord Krishna, if you think that this action is if knowledge is superior to that action, then if in your view this is superior, then tat kim, why are you neo jayasi indicating why are you trying to ask me to do this? Why are you trying me to engage me in this in this karmani, in this particular action, which is ghore indicating so terrible. It's really a terrible action. Why are you asking me to do this? If you are asking me to do something else, like, touch the feet of Bhishma Pitamaha and, also do some prayers for the war to go really well, all those things I can understand. But here, you're really asking me to engage myself in this really terrible action. Oh, Krishna, how can you ask me to do this? So this is the question which is going on in Arjuna's mind. And So for that reason, now we have the second shloka, which follows immediately this, because after he said this, Arjuna must have thought, I'm asking this question, but did Krishna really listen to me? Did he hear me well? And so he says, hey, Krishna, hold on, hold on for a minute here. I'm really confused. For a while, I thought I really understood all that you said in the last 72 shlokas. You gave me this big speech about this identity that I am. Then you told me about everything. But then at the end, you told me that, sukha dukkhe same kritva labha labho jaya jaya. And then after that, you told me that, karmanyevadikaraste, all that. You said that I should really fight here. But then you also said about this sthita prajna person there, who is really the highest type of person, who wants nothing from the world and all that. Now, if sthita prajna is where I need to go, why are you asking me to be bound by this action? Bound by all this ambition of winning this war and, killing these people. So it seems like in one breath, you're saying that, I should basically walk the path of knowledge and find this Atmanyev Atmana Tushtaha. You remember that shloka? So you ask me to do this. On the other hand, you're saying that, take this path of action, go out there and, just do the best you can in the battlefield. So, hey, Krishna, do me a favor, will you? Just make sure that, that I understood really what you're trying to say. So that's the kind of confusion that Arjuna had in his mind. So let's see, how does he ask this question? Vyamishreneva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me tadekam vada nishchitya yena shreyohamapnuyam. So Vyamishrena iva vakyena, as though Arjuna feels that if I were to ask sort of directly, maybe Krishna might think that, I am being too direct, or, maybe I don't want to show that I'm really confused here. So that's why he says, with this, you're confusing me. Buddhim vyamishrena, vya plus me is actually, and plus me, these are two upasargas which are added there to mishra. Mishra means mixed, or mixed in this case, mixed message that Arjuna is getting from Krishna here. So he says, vyamishrena iva vakya. Vakya means that sentence or the statement that Krishna made. Buddhim moha. Moha, you've heard this word before too, which means delusion or confusion. So Arjuna is saying, with that shloka that you said, with that statement that you made before, I'm, sort of confused here. So therefore, ekam vada nishchitya. Nishchitya means, for sure. Tell me for sure. Yena shreyaha aham apnuya. Shreyaha. This is also another word that we have come across before. Shreyaha means what is auspicious, what is good, or what is the best route, what is the best path. That aham, I, apnuyam, attain, Yena, tell me which one. That ekam, tell me which is the one path. Vada, speak here, nishtitya for sure. So, as we said, Lord Krishna was really praising the glories of the knowledge, the path of knowledge, right? So he wants, Arjuna is very clear. He says, you tell me which one is superior. Is knowledge superior to action, or action is superior to knowledge? I want to do only that which is the best for me. So you have to tell me this. And, he's trying to also say that to show how, Arjuna was an army person, right? And he is a kind of a black and white. There is no ifs and buts for him. It's not as if both will work or only one. He can just choose anyone just like that. He wants a very clear direction from Krishna as to which one is really the most important one. And that's why he says, Shreyo apnuyam. And Shreya, again, in Kathopanishad, you would have understood that too, right? So, again, the reason why Arjuna was so confused is that, in the second chapter, you find that Krishna was praising Jnana Yoga like anything. Ashcharyavat pashyati kaschidenam, where he said that, this entire Jnana Yoga is such a wonder thing. And you really everyone needs to learn that. And then, he's praises Tasya Prajna Pratishtita in about the last 18 shlokas. He continuously keeps on praising the person who is a Jnana Yogi, all that. And then he also the Brahmi Sthiti, which we talked about earlier. So he constantly is praising that. But in spite of it, he continuously keeps telling Arjuna that, hey, Arjuna, you have to fight here. So because of the fact that there were two different quote unquote paths there, Arjuna is then confused. Arjuna thinks, that maybe this path of karma that Lord Krishna was talking about, as well as this path of knowledge, they're actually two different paths. That was Arjuna's confusion there. So, but then Lord Krishna was not necessarily talking about that way. Those two are not really two different paths. And we'll see how he's going to explain that. But that is one thing. The other contradiction or confusion that Arjuna was looking at it was that, he thought that the path of action, he did not have a good clarity really on what is this path of action. So we saw one or two shlokas last in the second chapter where this action itself, karma, there is karma and there is karma yoga. So karma can be just an action which is done for our own, to satisfy our own self. So which could be sort of for myself, which we call this is where it is satisfying my own ego. In common parlance, we would say as what is in it for me. Anything and everything when I do, where only I am satisfied, that could be called as just karma or actions. Or maybe there was, by doing this, I'll get a lot of fame and glory, which is also, again, pampering my ego. Or I'm doing something because I'm really getting a lot of pleasure by doing this, just for my own self. So all those things are what we call as karma. But then karma yoga is different. Karma yoga is actually a selfless action. And so that karma yoga is that is selfless action. And in second chapter, we went a little more detail into that analysis where we said that selfless action is actually already a path towards moving forward. So it's like this. If I'm going to University of Michigan and I'm going to want to do a PhD in chemistry, for example, Now, in order to do a PhD in chemistry, I have to do a bachelor's degree, at least an undergrad degree. Without an undergrad degree, there is no way I can actually get to a PhD. Even if somebody were to say somebody finishes a school, 12th grade or whatever, and then they say that, well, come and join our PhD program, that is really not possible at all, because you have to go through an undergrad degree where you go into a little more details about the various branches of chemistry. And once you're familiar with it, then only you can go forward to do a PhD. So the same way, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga are actually one leading to another. Only when we do Karma Yoga, not karma, but Karma Yoga, which is selfless action, only at that point can we really move ahead to go into Jnana Yoga. So now one may say, then does that mean that this Bhagavad Gita that I'm listening here, that is Jnana Yoga, right? So does that mean I shouldn't be sitting here? No, that is not what it means. It basically means that you are understanding it, you are listening to it, but along with that, Karma Yoga is an essential sadhana which needs to be understood. So that's the aspect which is where we are getting into, and but which was explained to some extent in the second chapter. But Arjuna, being a man of action, man of really dynamic action, impatience, like we all are, we just want to get the entire Jnana Yoga just like that. But the idea is it can be happen only when we can practice Bhagavad Gita in our own lives, in each and every action that we do, where we try to make it as selfless as possible. We reduce slowly and slowly the amount of importance we give to each one of our actions. So with that in mind, we see that that's Arjuna really had not understood that aspect. So he thinks they're completely two different paths, but in reality, they are the same ones. They are actually one leading to another. So you see that how Lord Krishna again, even though he has spent like almost, how many was that? 72 minus 11, about 61 shlokas, really explaining through the whole thing. But then he is very kind, and he recognizes he knows the potential of Arjuna, and he wants to make sure that he answers his question. So we see that the verse 3 of the third chapter starts with Lord Krishna now addressing Arjuna by explaining about how these two paths are related and how it appeals to different people. So let us see that. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Lokesmin vividha nishtha. Lokesmin vividha nishtha. Pura prokta maya nagha. Pura prokta maya nagha. Jnana yogena sankhyanam. Jnana yogena sankhyanam. Karma yogena yoginam. Karma yogena yoginam. So we see Lord Krishna starts his discourse in the third chapter with the third shloka here, saying that lokesmin, loke, that is in this world, loke in this world, asmin, there are dvivida. Dvi means two. So dvivida nishtha. Nishtha indicating people who are following it, or people who are abiding in that, people who believe in that path, or who have a firm belief, firm abidance in there. So lokesmin dvivida nishtha. So there are twofold paths. Pura Prokta Maya Anagha. He calls, very lovingly, he calls Arjuna as Anagha. Anagha indicating somebody who is so pure, who is totally a sinless person, So he just wants to, so beautifully he just addresses him that way. And he says, Pura. Pura means from a long time ago. It can mean that way. Or it can also mean, as Krishna is probably, reminding Arjuna, hey, Arjuna, I just told you this in the second chapter. You forgot already? How can that be? So that word pura can mean both of them, Pura indicating that is the state of affairs for a long time, but it can also mean, just recently. So in this world, there are those two people. So lokesmin vivida nishta. So, and as I said, nishta means abidance, but here it can also mean the two different paths. So what are those two different paths? One is Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam, Karma Yogena Yoginam. So one is this path of Jnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga. And the second one is the Buddhi Yoga. You remember he had used the word Buddhi Yoga in the second chapter. Here he's calling that same thing as Karma Yoga. So this is where he's coming to. So Jnana Yogena Yoginam and Sankhya. Sankhya, the word Sankhya itself also means Atma. So it is referring to the Jnana Yoga or the yoga of knowledge. And Karma Yoga, the path of action or path of selfless action. Interestingly, Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji in his Bhashya, actually in his introductory Bhashya to Bhagavad Gita, he actually refers to these two paths as the Pravritti Marga and the Nivritti Marga. So in there itself, he talks about how that in this world, for this world to run, for this world to survive, for the sustenance of really this entire creation, you need two types of people. One is the people who follows the Nivritti Marga or the path of knowledge. So those rishis who are following that path of knowledge, we need those people to be there to uphold the dharma. So it's a beautiful bhashya. If ever you get a chance to read that, you'll be amazed at the beauty, the way Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji has put that bhashya together. So that is the Nivritti Marga. And Pravritti Marga is the people who are doing that action. And when they do the action, they do it with the Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. That is, giving that entire results to Ishvara. So Ishvara is in and through every action. So that is the two different ones. So that's the same thing which is reflected here as Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam, Karma Yogena Yoginam. So in a sense, there are two paths, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. So the people who follow this Jnana Yoga are those who are very subtle in their thinking. And through the practice of Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam, one attains that subtlety. And it is with that subtlety that one gets the power of a viveki, or a power of discrimination. So with this discrimination, for those people, the Jnana Yoga is really pointed out. And Karma Yoga is for people like all of us seekers who have just started walking on this path of spirituality, on the path of perfection, on the path of the perfection that we can bring in and through every action we can do. So for those people, the path of Karma Yoga has been prescribed. So indirectly, you see, Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna that, hey, Arjuna, it's not that as if Jnana Yoga is not meant for you, but he's saying that you who are a dynamic person, you need to walk on this path of Karma Yoga, try to get out of this aspect of what is in it for me. Because if you remember in the first chapter, where Arjuna was weeping, he was grieving because of many different things, everything associated with he being the person. It is my relatives, or what will happen to my fame and glory, what will happen to my, to all the people who are close to me, what will happen to all the traditions that we've been holding. So all that was connected to his ego, or ego in the sense individuality, not in a totally negative sense, but in the sense of an individuality. So that being the case, Lord Krishna had to explain to him really how these two paths are related. So first, that individuality needs to come down. And in order to do that, Karma Yoga is the right path to follow this. And so Lord Krishna tells him about how, Karma Yoga is first thing that Arjuna needs to practice. And indirectly, that's the thing that Lord Krishna is telling us too, as the prerequisites or pre-qualification that is needed before you get into the PhD. So it's the undergrad level, if you will. And by no means am I trying to, change the Karma Yoga and Jnana, but I'm just giving that as the prerequisites or the qualification that is needed in order to get to that level of this. Once through Karma Yoga, when our own minds become more clearer and the clarity is there, then automatically the aspect of Jnana Yoga sinks in very beautifully, and that leads us to going forward. So this is, in a sense, what we are seeing in these 3 shlokas so far. I will stop at this point because the next, with this, actually, one small topic is over. From the next one, we're going to be talking a lot about actionlessness. It starts with Naishkarmyam, what is action and what is not action. And for that, we need to analyze that a little more deeper. And also, last week, I think I took 10 more minutes of your time. So I want to give back 10 minutes of the time for today for you. So with that, I will stop here. And as you think about these 2 paths that we discussed today, if any questions comes to your mind, if there is any, I would say, discussion that is needed on how these 2 paths may not necessarily align in the way we work, please do send me a text or a WhatsApp, and we'll use that as a reflection time for next week. I also have a couple of my own ideas on the questions over there, but we'll bring that as well and we will discuss it. So with that, we'll finish here. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om, thank you.
Thank you.
Hari Om, thank you.
Hari Om.